Well, winter meetings are here in a huge way. Juan Soto is a New York Met, and there are rumors flying everywhere throughout the rest of baseball and in Detroit. We'll talk about that all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, December 9th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I almost said contract. Got Juan Soto on the brain. Wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in, welcome all. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Winter meetings are officially here, and this is the time of year where I don't record early in the day because of this exact reason. Juan Soto is officially a New York Met. He signs a 15-year, $765 million contract at about 10:15 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday night. You know, usually throughout the offseason, I will record in the late morning or early afternoon, right? I know what I'm going to talk about the next day. I do my show prep in the morning. And you know, throughout the day, I slowly chip away at it. And then when I feel like I have a show ready, I get in front of the camera. Winter meetings is the time of year where I wait until as late as I possibly can. I will record as close to midnight as I physically am able to, because stuff like this happens just way too much during this week of the baseball offseason. And that is why we love it so much. This whole week is going to be that. It's going to be talking about winter meetings, the biggest news, notes, and rumors from the previous day of winter meetings. So you can expect that throughout the entire course of the week. We have the Rule 5 draft and so much more. And mostly, again, just so many news, notes, and rumors. Well, of course, as we mentioned Friday, the last few years have been a lot slower in winter meetings than they used to be, you know, pre-COVID. But we can hope that this year will be an exciting one. And the reason why we can hope that is because the biggest domino has fallen at the very, very start of winter meetings. As I said, Juan Soto, a Met, 765 over 15. That is $51 million a year. The funniest part of this contract to me, okay, we'll get into all the intricacies, how this affects the Tigers, which it really affects everybody in the sport, maybe even everybody in all of sports, when you have the biggest contract in North American sports history. But I think the funniest part to me, pretty easily, is the opt-out. He has an opt-out after year 5. Imagine being so good that you sign a contract that is the biggest in your continent's history, in all sports, not even just baseball. And you still are talented enough to go, you know what, though? I might be worth more than this 5 years from now. Let's make sure I have a safety valve. Hilarious, dude. Hilarious. And like worthy of it too. You know, not funny because he doesn't deserve the money or doesn't deserve the opt-out or whatever. He deserves all of it. He's a generational talent. He's phenomenal. And you know, I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there that see numbers this big and go, no one's worth that amount of money. That's fine for you to feel that way. That is a wild number. $51 million a year for 15 years. That's mind-boggling. That's hard to comprehend, right? But people said that when the first $1 million contract was given out in baseball too. It's just kind of like the natural progression of sport. And obviously this is a much crookeder number than we're used to, right? But like, you know, Ohtani hit the 700 mils just a year ago. As we move forward, this is, you know, I'm not going to say will become more common. I don't think we're going to have a sport riddled with contracts this big, but they won't be as much of an anomaly. And then at some point in my lifetime, there's going to be the first $1 billion contract, and people are going to freak out. Like, that's just, the best players continue to raise the bar, and that's just kind of how it works. And for as much as I think it's totally fair, like, again, as I say all the time, I don't ever tell anybody how to be a fan. If you believe that, no one should get paid that much, that is more than fine. And I completely understand it. But from where I sit, if the Tigers would have given out this contract today, which I don't even have faith that this front office even called Scott Boras to talk about Juan Soto. So, like, this is a wild fantasy land far, far away, obviously. But if this was a Tigers contract, you think I'd be coming on air here and, like, complaining? You think I'd be like, oh, wow, that's so much money? No, dude, I'd be popping bottles and doing backflips on air. So, like, you know what? It is a ton of money. And that 51 mil might be the Tigers' entire budget this offseason. I don't know that, but it might be. It's probably more than, like, the Athletics' entire budget this offseason. That is a ridiculous number. But I think that all fans dream of having an owner that runs his team like Steve Cohen. And I'm not saying the Mets are a perfect, well-oiled machine, right? They have issues below him in their front office. They had a good year this year, got back to the postseason, good for them. But they have mishandled a lot of that money. But to have an owner that is going to financially back your team no matter what, I think that's most of, I can speak for Tigers fans more than any other fan base, it's most of this fan base's wildest dreams come true. And I know that the bar isn't even that high. Like, we're not even asking for an owner that's going to give out, $800 million contracts. But just to like, this is every fan base's wildest dream for an owner. Almost every fan base hates their owner. Right? I know that we have the goggles to only focus on our own. I completely get that. But, like, 80%, maybe even higher, of fans, especially in baseball, because it's not a salary cap sport, despise their ownership. So you can criticize the number all you want. You can criticize the saga all you want. I'm not going to step in the way of that, and I'm not going to argue with you about it. But wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool? Hopefully, this is a domino effect going forward. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have, rooting and covering a team that was never going to land Juan Soto, is now that the rest of the offseason can finally actually kind of start. And we've seen some pitchers sign and whatnot, but the biggest names out there outside of Soto, obviously, we're all just waiting for Soto to sign so he could set the market. And now it's really exciting that we will hopefully be able to kick off winter meetings here when everyone's all in one place in Dallas, Texas. Have a flurry of moves happen the rest of the week and the rest of the offseason here. I think the biggest names to watch, if you're directly kind of linking everything back to Soto, would be the outfield market. You saw Tyler O'Neill sign with the Baltimore Orioles this weekend. That obviously before Soto, but him getting off the market as well. A 3-year deal with Baltimore. $49.5 million. That is $16.5 million a season. Just had a really solid season for the Red Sox. And, from the Tigers' perspective, that's a corner outfielder that's played really good defense in his career and crushes lefties. If there was a guy out there that you wouldn't mind adding to this already kind of loaded and set outfield, it probably would have been Tyler O'Neill. That's not me saying that this is a huge missed opportunity and they needed to match that and get him or whatever, but I know that a lot of Tigers fans had him on their radar. And so he goes off the board along with obviously the biggest free agent in the market, both outfielders. Over the weekend, though, I think one of the big signings that I think quickly went kind of not unnoticed because it did have its own day to kind of talk about it, but Willy Adames to the Giants is going to quickly be forgotten about because Juan Soto just signed. And that is a huge deal for the rest of the infield market and for your Detroit Tigers. We'll talk about that and more right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off of site-wide during their cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off of promo code MLB. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience, and their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift and thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts, and so much more. Save 50% off site-wide during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchase applies. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow as we talk about all of the biggest news and notes and rumors in winter meetings every day this week. So really quickly before, and I promise we'll stop talking about Soto because I know that this is a Tigers show ultimately. The Yankees their offer was public. And John Heyman reported that the Yankees' offer was $760 million for 16 years. So $5 million fewer and 1 year more. So that AAV is knocked down a little bit, plus just the inherently less. But that is still so much money and so close to what the Mets were offering. That kind of just makes you feel like he was like, okay, well, for that little in price, relatively speaking, obviously, I know $5 million is a ton to me, and to most of us, but like when it's that close, I have a feeling that it was just like, I want to be a Met, which, good on him. Good on the New York Mets there. Oh, and while I'm recording, there we go. Dodgers re-signed Blake Trinan, reliever, 2-year, $22 million deal. So Juan Soto prefers the Mets over the Yankees, does stay in New York. Willy Adames over the weekend, as I mentioned before the break there, signs a 7-year deal for $182 million a year. That's $26 million a season over the next 7 years. It's really interesting because the Giants wanted Carlos Correa, right? And then the whole, doctor thing happened and he ended up going back to Minnesota. So it's interesting to see them go after another shortstop this year. Obviously, at least not at the time of this recording, Willy Adames hasn't been revealed that he has some chronic injury that's going to linger with him the rest of his career. But we'll see what happens there. The Giants, good for them. Honestly, Buster Posey, his first big move as president of baseball ops, GM, whatever his role technically is, but he's calling the shots over there. They always felt like they were the bridesmaid, never the bride, right? Like it was just constantly the Giants are in on so-and-so, right? Aaron Judge, even, Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, like every big name free agent the Giants were in on, and then they just like never got anybody. And so I'm glad that obviously Willy Adames is on the level of some of those guys I just mentioned, but for them to finally get a big money free agent that they've been wanting to get for a few years must feel nice for that fan base. Adames was somebody that a lot of Tigers fans wanted, and 26 AAV is quite a bit of money, and I'm sure that that's way higher than what the Tigers were willing to offer a player of Adames's caliber, and so he goes to the Giants. And I'm not like super heartbroken about it. I like Willy Adames a lot. It would have been cool for him to come back here, given the fact that We were the team that originally signed him back when he was an international free agent. But I think, again, like my mindset, and I've said this a lot throughout the offseason, is that the ownership group, that Illich is giving this front office a specific budget and saying, you have X amount of dollars to spend this winter. You can sign anybody you want, as many players as you want, but it's going to fit in this price range. And maybe I'm being stupid. Maybe that's not how the front office works over there. But based on the evidence we have for the Tigers front office over the last, I don't know, almost decade now, that's how I interpret the situation. I'll put it that way. And 26 mil would have eaten into that a lot. And that's too bad, because Willy Adames is a heck of a ball player, and shortstop has been a complete disaster for this team. I mean, heck, he could even play third base. We talked about that a little bit last week. But I do think that this, back to kind of the broader picture, is also going to be kind of a big domino in a long line of follow-up moves, because he's one of the biggest named infielders outside of first baseman. I don't even really, first base is like its own entity. It's not even really like infield anymore. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But that could also, you could see a flurry of other moves sign after that, now that Willy Adames has kind of set that market. We saw Shane Bieber go back to the Cleveland Guardians on a 1-year deal over the weekend. Another guy that, again, we're always going to relate everything back to from the Tigers' perspective. I wouldn't have hated, if it was a cheaper deal like this. Again, as I say all the time, our pitching coaching staff is just so good at getting the most out of players. And, we saw what they did with Jack Flaherty and Michael Lorenzen, right? Like these guys that, their careers are maybe on a downward trajectory or not what they were. And then they come to Detroit and have a huge bounce back in our all-star caliber pitchers. That really could have been Shane Bieber, but he clearly loves Cleveland. Former Cy Young winner there, albeit in the 2020 season. And I'm sure that he wanted to stay there. And I'm sure that they want a fully healthy Shane Bieber again, which I feel like they haven't had maybe since the 2020 season. One of the kind of weirder moves of the weekend heading into winter meetings here was Luis Severino signs a 2-year deal with the Athletics, not the Oakland Athletics. I don't even know, are they the Vegas Athletics yet? Or like they're playing Sacramento for the foreseeable future, but they're not going to be the Sacramento A's and then just change their name again in a couple of years. Are they just the Athletics? Is that their thing? They're not from anywhere. They're just the A's. Okay. So Luis Severino at 31 years old signs a 2-year deal with the A's. They really made it sound like this. And it's funny because on Friday I said on this show, I was like, is anybody going to actually sign with the A's? And then sure enough, right after I recorded, they pretty much did. But they really made it sound like this was their biggest move of the offseason, right? Like, we'll see what happens. There's been some rumors about them extending Brent Rooker, which would be very, very smart of the organization to do. And I hope that they do it. But they really made it sound like this was, like, they announced at the press conference that he was going to be the opening day starter. Severino, who was a very promising young prospect, had a couple of really good years for the Yankees, got hurt. Obviously, last year, solid season, right? Also has had some shaky years mixed in there. And then again, obviously the injury concerns. I'm not heartbroken over not getting Luis Severino. I'm really not. That's fine. And I wish him the best. I hope that the Athletics experience is good to everybody that plays there, because I'm not sure it's going to be, and I'm not sure it has been for years, but I'm hoping that this change can make the A's a competent, franchise that actually treats its players well. I think my biggest takeaway, and I posted this on Twitter or whatever it's called, and I said, I'm not mad at not getting Severino. But the report was that the A's are going to put their salary into the $100 million range, which is a huge step up for them. And that's good. Now, is it very clearly obvious that they were just not spending money because they didn't want fans to go to games when they were in Oakland, and now immediately after they leave, they start paying people? Yes, very blatantly. But from our perspective over here in the great city of Detroit, I think my biggest ask was just don't let the Sacramento, Las Vegas A's have a higher payroll than you. Don't do it, dude. Don't do it. If I have to come on this show when spring training rolls around and talk about how the Tigers, who had, I think, the 5th or 6th lowest payroll in baseball last year, have a lower payroll than the Athletics, I'm going to cry. So please don't. And look, it's projected right now. It's in the 90s. And so that means that like a signing or two and they're well over 100. Like I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not really worried that it's going to happen. And the benchmark shouldn't just be compare yourself to the Athletics. That shouldn't be anybody in baseball's benchmark, at least over the last 5 years. This isn't Moneyball anymore. But I don't need that visual in my life. So if that could not happen, that'd be really cool. Let's talk about some other wild things that happened over the weekend. Clay Holmes, the starting pitcher in what was a busy weekend for the Mets. We'll talk about that and get to Tigers rumors right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all of your bets. You can just visit FanDuel.com today to join, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always. So next up on the docket, we have Clay Holmes, the starting pitcher. Signs a 3-year deal with the New York Mets early in the weekend. And it is announced when the signing happens that he is going to be tried out as a starting pitcher. And that they do have a backup plan. And that the backup plan is for him to just be the setup man to Edwin Diaz if starting pitcher doesn't work out. This is fascinating because this is not the first time we've seen this. This is something that's been happening more and more. Teams are taking really high velocity, really good stuff relievers and trying to pay them and stretch them out as starters. And that's the way they get to poach them from other teams. We saw the Giants do that with Hicks, right? The dude threw 105 when he was a Cardinal and was in their bullpen. The Giants go, we'll pay you 3 times what they're offering you and try you out as a starter. And you know what? It was an up and down experiment in year 1, but he had some good starts. I think he had a good start against the Tigers, if I remember right. So this is really a fascinating thing where some organizations are just prioritizing stuff so much that it's like, look, I don't care what your role was on your previous team. If we can get you to replicate that stuff 2 to 3 times through a lineup, we would rather you do that than waste it, quote unquote, on 1 inning. Now, that's much easier said than done. It is significantly more challenging to be a starting pitcher than a relief pitcher. That's why there are way more relief pitchers than starting pitchers, and failed starting pitchers become relief pitchers. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm very fascinated with teams that try that strategy and how long into the contract it is going to last. Like I said, Clay Holmes, 3 years for the Mets. Michael Conforto also signed with the Dodgers. Seems like everybody is signing with the Dodgers. We'll talk about a hopefully former Dodger here in a second when we get to Tigers rumors. The only other player that I want to bring up here is that it sounds like Sasaki is going to be posted this week, which is going to make for even more excitement here during winter meetings. Now, as we mentioned, the Dodgers, unfortunately, the very, very heavy favorite to land him is, in fact, the Los Angeles Dodgers, which would give them a rotation of essentially 5 aces, which is only slightly terrifying, but it'll be a fun saga to track at least, and everybody is in on him, right? This is not a financial restriction negotiation. He's only going to get, about the same amount of money everywhere because he's an international free agent. So that at least makes it a little bit more, okay, it truly is the pitch. It truly is just what you're offering the player as an organization. So we can at least hold our breath a little bit more, have a little bit more hope when talking about his market. Let's end by talking about some Tigers rumors over the weekend. Evan Petzold of the Freep mentioned that Walker Buehler is in fact a potential target for your Detroit Tigers. I absolutely love this. We did a little bit more of an extensive breakdown a couple of weeks ago on the prospect of Walker Buehler becoming a Detroit Tiger. I think that would be such a perfect fit. And The Athletic wrote an article over the weekend basically outlining what a contract with the Tigers would look like for Walker Buehler and saying that is a really good fit. And that is where that specific article, which was written by Jim Bowden, again, of The Athletic, he's had the contract at $44 million over 2 years with an opt-out after the first year. So that'd be a little bit over $20 million a year for 2 years. That's about market value for the type of pitcher that he is. I can't imagine he gets a super long-term deal this year just because he struggled in the regular season and came off of a pretty serious injury, but was really good in at the end of the postseason, right after his first appearance in the playoffs. Looked like the Walker Buehler of old. And I think that it really would kind of be a match made in heaven, given, again, the point I keep reiterating about the Tigers pitching coaching staff. So that's a really interesting one that I'm going to keep eyes on and I'm going to root for. I would love that signing. It's just a matter of A, the contract that he's going to want, B, the contract the Tigers are willing to pay, which is the huge question mark surrounding this entire offseason for the Detroit Tigers. That's the question. Every single article about the Tigers is, are they going to do nothing or are they going to spend a ton? There's like no in between. Nobody's like, oh yeah, the Tigers might sign a player or two. It's like, yeah, they're going to, in one of the articles, Ken Rosenthal put out an article where he mentioned Jack Flaherty reunion for the Detroit Tigers. Now, the Tigers have expressed interest in that. I don't think anybody here would have an issue with that. I don't want to speak for everyone, but Jack Flaherty was obviously phenomenal with the Detroit Tigers and seemed to really like playing here, seems to like all the guys in the clubhouse. I think that would be a great deal. He's probably going to want a multi-year deal now. That's going to be a decent amount of money given how well he pitched this season. So that's going to be kind of an interesting storyline to follow as well. But within that article, he mentioned that the Tigers may be proceeding with caution, was his quote in the piece, because they have Javi Baez on contract and that didn't work out well. So they might not want to give out another big contract. Can we stop this? I thought we were rid of this when Miguel Cabrera retired. And like, this is not me saying that Javi Baez has been good. He's one of the worst contracts in all of baseball. It's a shame that this situation has turned into what it is. And it's very frustrating for me, as I'm sure it is for all of the listeners here. Chris Ilitch is not in a position where, because he is paying Javi Baez to play awful, he can now no longer afford anybody else. That was the biggest lie that this ownership group in this front office sold the fan base when Miguel Cabrera was on the team. It's like, oh, we can't sign any free agents. We got Miggy. He's making $30 million a year. Sorry, everybody. That was never true. Ever true. And it's still not true. So I don't subscribe to that logic at all. But if that is actually a thought that this front office is having, then I would have a huge issue with that. He also mentioned in the article, though, Christian Walker by name. And that's where we'll end the show here, is talking about him. Walker Buehler would obviously be great. Christian Walker, the first baseman, I think everybody's ears perk up a little bit when they hear that. This is a guy, we did a full breakdown on his fit with the Tigers a few weeks ago now. So you can go watch that for a little bit more in depth about his numbers and the type of profile he is. But really good hitter, really good defender, plays first base. I think it would probably, you're going to have to sign him to a multi-year deal if that is actually legitimate. But I think that the biggest side effect of that would be you are pretty much throwing in the towel on Torkelson, and that would immediately make him tradable. And I think that you would probably trade him in the next 12 months if you were to sign Christian Walker. Now, that's Ken Rosenthal. I don't even think he wrote like the Tigers are interested. He literally just said the Tigers should probably consider signing him. Right. He just mentioned the fact that if they're going to spend money, they should go get a bat like Christian Walker. So there are no ties from the Tigers to Walker. There's no, like big rumor that the Tigers are going to break the bank for him. Just Ken Rosenthal saying if they want a bat, maybe they should look at him. So we'll see what happens with that. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow talking about winter meetings yet again. I am gonna go to bed. That's English. So I can get up nice and early and just refresh the internet all day for a week straight. And it's going to be so much fun. Come join the ride with me. Appreciate you all greatly for supporting the show as always. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope, and I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.